All right, good evening, everybody. It is Sunday, October 30th, 2022. It is officially the second to last day of October. Now, tomorrow, which will be October 31st, is going to be Halloween. So I want to wish everybody a happy early Halloween. Just in case we're not live tomorrow, I will be doing some traveling. As you all know, I will be flying back to Miami, Florida, so potentially I leave it up about 50-50. We may have a live stream tomorrow, we may not. So happy Halloween to all of those who celebrate around the world. Be sure you're being safe out there if you're gonna get out there and do your trick-or-treating with your kids and whatnot. But welcome to the Sunday night stock market, a look ahead live stream. And this is going to be an unbelievably busy week on Wall Street. Now, I think the number one thing that we need to talk about tonight is the Federal Reserve. We are going to be hearing from the Fed Chair Jerome Powell Wednesday as they make their monetary policy decision. Now, consensus on the street is probably about a 75 basis point rate hike. However, we did have the Bank of Canada last week sort of backtrack, maybe do a little bit of a soft pivot, only doing about 50 basis points. So there's a lot of chatter on Wall Street that maybe the Federal Reserve will do the same thing. However, I do not think that. I think we will have a 75 basis point rate hike. Last week, we did get some gross domestic product information out. So US GDP grew by 2.6% and stocks rallied despite a slew of missed tech stock earnings, which we talked about on the live stream. Also, the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage stands at about 7%. Just to quickly recap on the week, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rallied about 5.72% to 32,861. The S&P 500 also had a great week, rallying 3.95% to 3,901. And then the NASDAQ Composite rose modestly about 2.24% to 11,102. So the Dow led the S&P and the Dow. And I think that makes sense. I mean, the Dow led the S&P and the NASDAQ, and I think that makes sense because we had a lot of big misses in tech earnings. So without further ado, let us start the live stream. And I will say hello to everybody in the chat. Beautiful night out here. Hopefully you guys had a good Sunday. I see Soho is here. Buy the book, the one and only Brian is here. Chris Beeman, good to see you, Chris. Melissa White, Sally, Paul Greenwell, Tone Rick, Rozzy, British Gray, Delia Kelly is here. Abdullah, Vinny Castellano, welcome. Tyree is here. Andrea Lewis is here. Says happy Devil's Night. Good to see you. The Dark Horse, Linda Silva, Marcelo Gil from Brazil, Paul Tricky, and William. So we're here once again in the WeWork office, everybody. So let's close the window and get the live stream started. And I believe the weather is going to be quite favorable tonight, so we won't have to worry about any rain. This is the WeWork building here on Madison Avenue. You could see the kitchen area here, and I think it's maybe 6 floors, I think, in total. So if the internet goes out, I'll see you guys on the other side. Hey, Pizza Man is here. Good to see you. UF. Welcome, Steph. All right, we should be getting out right now. All right, push to exit. And here we are, my friends. We are now on the ground floor, right here on Madison Avenue and East 31st Street. This is where you can get the M3 and the M4 bus. But tonight we are going to be walking uptown. We are going to be doing our stock market, a look ahead live stream. This week is going to be action-packed with earnings, many earnings reports. Now, I think a bright spot from this week of earnings is probably going to be a lot of the oil companies that are reporting. Now, if you remember last week, we heard from ExxonMobil and we also heard from Chevron. And on an EPS basis, on an earnings per share basis, I believe ExxonMobil increased their earnings about 100%, and then Chevron not too far behind with about an 86% earnings increase. So I think we need to be aware of that as we move through the rest of earnings season this week. I think we have a ton of energy and oil stocks reporting, and I think that we're probably going to see the same thing. Massive profit increases, massive revenue growth. And for the main reason, if you think about Q3, obviously ended September. If you take a look at the crude oil futures contract, ticker symbol CL, for almost the entire quarter, we had oil trading above $100 a barrel, which really, really helped a lot of these oil companies. Check out the beautiful view we have here on the ground level, East 33rd Street in Madison of the Empire State Building. Pretty nice night, not too hot, not too cold, perfect fall weather. Empire State Building's looking awesome. Hemp Lord is here, so what's up, gang? Sabrina Fair is joining us. MSK says, hey, Thompson. Jib is here, welcome. Vinny Castellano says Disney will be huge this week. So I think Disney may be reporting next week. I could be mistaken. Does anybody know the exact date that Disney is reporting? I think it may be November 8th. But it's interesting because, to Vinny's point, all right, let's walk 2 more blocks up Madison, and then we're gonna make a left here. But to Vinny's point, if we think about the Dow Jones Industrial Average, I think there's only 4 stocks that need to report, or 4 stocks left in the Dow 30 that have yet to report their quarterly earnings. And I think the main one is Disney. Now, I could be mistaken, but I think Disney does report on November 8th, which would be next week. And obviously, not this week, but next week is the midterm elections. I can't believe we're talking about that already. I remember doing these live streams in the summer discussing the potential price action after midterm elections, and it seems like it's already on our doorstep now. So we'll talk about midterms. Gregory, good to see you. Thank you for being here. Ecom World Soho says no one really cares about Disney. It's the diesel. That's the real news. In relation to the S&P 500, about 49% of all S&P stocks have reported so far. And if you want to break that down by market cap, that relates to about 65% of total market value for the S&P has reported so far. And here's the good news. The good news is about 70% of the earnings reports so far out of S&P companies have actually beat expectations. Now, obviously, the biggest disappointments, in my view, came out of the mega cap tech stocks. I would say the most egregious report came out of Amazon. However, Apple pretty much saved this stock market. Now, we did a deep dive into Apple's earnings report on the night of the earnings release, and they absolutely topped expectations, beating on both the top and the bottom line. Now, I will say this, and we also reviewed this almost ad nauseum. Now, Tim Cook came on the earnings call and he said something very interesting. He said, even though we grew our revenue about 8% year over year, if it wasn't for the strong dollar, we would have had a double-digit revenue growth quarter in Q3. Now, why is that important? Well, if you think about the exact impact to revenue, it was about 600 basis points, which is significant, right? 6 whole percentage points. Yikes, what's going on here? I don't even know where that's coming from. Oh, look at this. allowed in Miami, don't we? Hey, Monique's is Ecom. Some ships are switching to dual combustion engines. Dixon is here, says good night everybody, happy Halloween, watching from Venezuela. Good to see you. Tomorrow, today, we're gonna get you out of here. Celise says hello Tom, have a great walk, thank you so much, appreciate it. X, welcome, welcome. Okay, so Disney is set to report on the 8th. So that'll be not this week, but next week. Good to know. So let's head up 5th Avenue tonight. Now, I did notice the city was absolutely packed today. Tons of people out in the city. Oh, Marcelo, I didn't even know about that. George says, hey Tom, Facebook is down $700 billion. Mark Zuckerberg's personal net worth is down 11 billion. Yeah, so George, so Meta, I guess the official new name of the company, they did report, and we covered that in detail on the night that they actually reported. Now, the biggest concern that I have with Meta's earnings report is that capital expenditures are expected to skyrocket yet again. I think total spending for next fiscal year could hit $101 billion. Now, if you paid attention to what the CFO of Meta actually explained what those specific expenditures will be on, it's going to be, wow, check this out. Hold on, hold that thought. This is on the corner of 5th Avenue and East 35th Street. Beautiful view of the Empire State Building. I'm gonna go, I think this one is probably like a 9.2, 9.3 out of 10. Very good view. So the CFO came on the earnings call and he said that they're going to be spending a lot of money on bringing new data center capacity online, as well as investing heavily into AI. But if you do want to review and watch or listen to the earnings call, if you type !Meta, META in the chat, the Nightbot will drop the link to Meta's earnings call and you could listen to the conference call, or you could go back last week to our live stream where we did an in-depth review of it. Abdullah is here, welcome, good to see you Abdullah. Monique, hey, always a pleasure to have you here. Robert Parker, hey Robert, good to see you. Rocks is always an adventure in New York, indeed it is. Brad's brain, trust you well my friend. Happy Sunday to you. We're gonna be walking up towards the Stephen Schwartzman building tonight, the New York Public Library. Sean is here, says good evening Tom and everybody, welcome Sean. All right, let me give you guys one more view of the Empire. So we have a little bit of a light show going on here. But I think the most important thing for this week, and we're gonna cover every single day of this week, line item by line item, but it's not the Federal Reserve, right? So November 1 and November 2, which would be Tuesday and Wednesday, is when the Federal Reserve is going to meet. Then on November 2nd, Wednesday, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will be announcing his monetary policy changes, if any. So consensus is about a 75 basis point rate hike. But I believe that the market will be looking for clues, speaks in relation to the policy changes in December. I think everybody pretty much knows, and the bond markets have sort of been pricing in an additional 75 basis point rate hike. And for the record, if they actually do raise rates another 75 basis points, this will be the fourth consecutive 75 basis point rate hike since they started these rate hikes about 4 months ago, and that was the first time since 1994 the Fed started to raise rates in increments of 75 basis points. So we're in one of the strongest tightening cycles in recent history. And it seems as about this, I guess right now you could still call it a bear market rally, but we did have a follow-through day last week, which is still intact. But I think the market is trying to see through this rate hike and look for clues when Fed Chairman Jerome Powell speaks to see if there could potentially be what they're calling a soft pivot in December and maybe even February to say, look, if we raise interest rates 75 basis points in November, well, then maybe we could back off and only do about a 50 basis point rate hike and then another 25 basis point rate hike. But I still don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to have 75 coming up here this week and then an additional 75 before the end of the year, which will bring the Fed funds rate above 4%, probably around 4.25%, which could potentially lead us to our next leg lower. But I think that's probably what the market's going to be looking for, is verbiage to say, look, we're going to do one more rate hike, but then we're going to slow down. But what are your thoughts about that, everybody in the chat? George says, hey Tom, any thoughts on how Elon recently fired 3 executives at Twitter? No thoughts really, honestly, George. I think the media is making this sort of this deal to be a little bit bigger than it is, right? I mean, Elon's buying the company. He's a very, very, I would say, polarizing figure, a very popular guy. So it's just going to be the latest thing in the news cycle to sort of keep everybody occupied. But look, I mean, Elon Musk didn't buy Twitter to keep the same management in place, right? I mean, if we just sort of think about it like that, if the guy is going to drop 43 or 46 billion, whatever he overpaid for it, you think he's just going to keep all the same people? No, he's probably going to do a whole rip and replace. So I don't really have too many thoughts about it. I know that this is probably going to be a big news cycle in the media, probably for the next 2 to 3 months. But I'm going to try to block it out as much as possible, just to be totally frank. But everybody, this is East 40th Street, the beautiful New York Public Library, or the Stephen Schwarzman building. And right behind the Stephen Schwarzman building is the Bank of America Tower, as well as the Salesforce Tower. Yeah, Monique, that's right. It says at least they received a very nice severance. Yeah, they're probably all going to get paid out very well. Now, I think there were some rumors about how the CEO of Twitter may not be paid out the $65 million or something like that. But then again, at the end of the day, I think these people are going to be doing all right if I had to place bets on it. Yeah, Greg says he is the owner, so he decides who the management is. Yeah, I mean, I think the thesis around buying Twitter is he sort of wants to do a rip and replace and revamp the platform. So if he actually wants to do that, I don't think it's, I mean, I would never think that, he's just going to come in and keep everybody in place, right? This sort of reminds me, I'm not sure if you guys saw that video or an interview with, I'm trying to think of his name. I always blank on his name, Carl Icahn. So Carl Icahn did an interview with Andrew Ross Sorkin about how he bought some railroad company back in the day, and he couldn't figure out what any of the employees did at this particular company. So he hired a bunch of consultants. I think he brought in, maybe like a McKinsey or Deloitte or something like that, paid him $250,000 and said, hey, could you guys investigate and figure out what these guys do here in this office? Because I can't figure out what these guys do. Long story short, the consultants came back to Carl Icahn and says, you know what, Carl, you've been very straight with us. You paid us our money. Now we're going to be really straight with you. After 2 months of doing our investigative research, we don't know what these people do either. And that day, Mr. Icahn fired, I think, 3 floors of people right here in Manhattan, and the company still ran just as normal. So I think there's a lot of bloat at a lot of these tech companies, and I think the reason for the massive amount of bloat, specifically in tech companies over the last 15 years, is because we've been in this sort of artificially suppressed rate environment with massive liquidity awash in the marketplace. So a lot of these tech companies, they are able to sustain themselves because they could take on very cheap debt to pay employees, to expand operations, to hire new people. But sort of once that gravy train of liquidity and cheap money ends, that is when management looks to make those key changes to say, look, where can we trim the fat within an organization? And I think that'll probably happen at Twitter and a lot of other tech companies too. Just Barry is here, says, hey Tom, happy Halloween Eve. You too, Just Barry, thank you so much. We are standing outside one of my favorite places here, the New York Public Library. Sabrina Fair says, Tom, the majority of people at my company are just collecting a paycheck. Some collect $125,000 for about 5% work. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see just not only Twitter, right? I think a lot of people are talking about Twitter right now just because it's the flavor of the month, right? The deal closed, so Elon Musk has officially closed the deal to buy Twitter, so I think it's on everybody's mind right now. But, there's a lot of companies that I think are going to be in a fat trimming period. Now, if you remember last week, we did a deep dive into Alphabet's earnings report, or Google. And the interesting thing is that the CEO came on the earnings call and said, we're looking to get about 20% more productive. We're trying to get about 20% more productivity out of our workforce, which is sort of code for there's probably going to be some org changes. We're going to do a deep dive and probably do performance reviews, and then maybe do some key layoffs where it's needed. Not to say to be malicious, but again, I think coming off of this massive economic boom cycle that we've had after COVID with the massive amount of stimulus, I think you're experiencing a normal amount, or maybe even a little bit more than normal amount of bloat. Wow, check this out. This is the One Vanderbilt building here. We are on the corner of 5th Avenue and 42nd Street. But you also have a pretty nice view of the Chrysler building too. Looks great. Now, if we continue to walk down 42nd Street, headed east, you'll hit right into the Grand Central Station, which we may actually walk down this road so we could check it out. But here, if you walk all the way down here, you'll get to Bryant Park, as well as the Salesforce Tower and Bank of America Tower, and then into Times Square. Let's go this way because I think we went that way on the last couple live streams. Michael Dwyer. Funny. Excuse me. Shell says, so in my opinion, asking Google employees for 20% more output is definitely doable, and staying under 40 hours a week. Yeah, I think so too.
You don't even know what the fuck you're talking about.
Let me try to avoid this guy. Hopefully he doesn't notice us. I think we're in the clear. Wow. Well, that's good. All right, so Monday, tomorrow, everybody, which is October 31st, we are going to be hearing from some key semiconductor companies that are going to be reporting earnings, one of which being NXP Semiconductor. Now, if you look at the SOX, which is the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, I think we're down about 50%. Now, could we have a turnaround in the semiconductor sector as a whole? It's quite possible. Now, NVIDIA caught a little bit of a bid, but if you look at, I would say, the main semiconductor companies that I like to watch for, which would be AMD and NVIDIA, I think we need to break above the 50-day moving average and at least rally to the 200-day moving average and start to build some sort of a base before I think we're out of the woods here. Now, I am long-term very, very bullish on semiconductor stocks in general. Now, I'll give you guys just one, I would say, more relevant reason as to why I am bullish long-term, semiconductors, chips, and the like. And that actually stems from Meta's earnings call. Now, Meta, we just sort of reviewed about how their capital expenditures are set to go to $101 billion next year, if you could even fathom that. Now, did you notice the exact things that they are going to spend money on? It was artificial intelligence, it was expanding their data centers, and all of that particular equipment are going to require specialized servers, which have specialized chipsets in them. So that is a bull thesis for the semiconductor industry, just based upon the fact of Meta's earnings report alone. But if you think about all the other, I would call them thematics or themes going into the 21st century. Wait, hold that thought, check this out. That is the Times Square ball, and for some reason it's lit up in red tonight. Oh, maybe it's just changing multi-tricolors, I guess. But if you look at some of the other themes, right? EVs, autonomous driving. Now, speaking of EVs, I think this week is going to be packed, jam-packed, with a lot of Chinese EV companies reporting earnings. I think NIO, which is one of them, is going to be either reporting deliveries or they're going to be reporting corporate earnings. And the Chinese market is really, really ramping up as it relates to EV purchases. So if you think about the main technologies that are going to take us through the 21st century, I would say sort of the lifeblood of all that technology is going to be semiconductors, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how NXP Semiconductors reports on the 31st, which is Monday tomorrow. Hey, Audi 1996 is here. Just hello, everybody. Long time, no chat. I trust you well, my friend. We are now outside of Bryant Park with the Winter Village. I can't believe they already built the Winter Village. Check out this Beagle here. Now, I have a Beagle, but mine's getting a little bit old. I think mine's going on 12 years old now. That one looks like a puppy. Adorable Beagle. Oh my God. So this is Bryant Park Winter Village. Hey, Sunshine After Rain is here. What's up? Teresa Diaz is here. Good to see you, Teresa. Always appreciate you joining the chat. We are here at Bryant Park Winter Village. You know, I came here earlier today, and this place was so packed, which is good. It means a lot of tourists come back to the city. A lot of people feel comfortable coming back to New York, so that's a good thing. Beautiful view of the Empire State Building here from Bryant Park. Taxi cab is here. It says, hey Tom, did you cover Chinese tech giant Huawei's revenue this quarter? I didn't even have time to check it out, honestly. I've just been so preoccupied with a lot of the American stocks, but look, I think it's something to watch. And to Taxi Cab's point, did anybody read Barron's this weekend? Did anybody get a chance to read through Barron's or Investors Business Daily? Did you notice one of the main themes coming out of Barron's this week? Or I should say this weekend, apologize. It was a lot of articles about Chinese stocks or Chinese ADRs, right? So if you log on to, let's say, your brokerage account here in the United States, whether that be a Charles Schwab, whether that be, maybe you guys have Robinhood, hopefully not. If you type in ticker symbol BABA or for Alibaba, it's actually not, if you buy that particular stock, I should say, it's technically not you're buying shares in the company. That's an ADR. So these are called American Depository Receipts, which you're buying shares in holding companies in which those holding companies hold shares of those companies. Does that make sense? And now that the HSI, or the Chinese stock market, has literally cratered, fallen off a cliff, trading at levels not seen since the late 90s. Now, is this a value trap? Or could this be presenting us with an opportunity of a lifetime? You look at on a PE multiples, right? Price to earnings. We're in the single digits for some of these tech Goliaths, like Pinduoduo. You talk about an Alibaba. Or could this be just sort of a value trap, so to speak? I don't know, I'll let you guys be the judge of that, because there were some really, really good articles this week in Barron's, sort of outlining both the bull and bear thesis as it relates to China. So check it out. Hey, Jimmy Anderson is here. Says, cheers, my dude. Good to see you. Yeah, Julia M says potential value trap. So Julia, there's a lot of prominent figures on Wall Street that call China, quote unquote, uninvestable. Now, I think I agree with that. However, if you look back throughout history, when you have extreme bearish sentiment like this, you know, that's usually a signal to take the other side of the trade. And it seems like everybody on the street is consensus in saying that China is uninvestable. But you never know. I mean, maybe the CCP will be a little bit more lax in terms of their policies. And it only takes one sort of positive murmur from President Xi to really turn this thing around. I mean, if we have any positive news out of China, I would not be surprised to see, you know, some of these stocks up 20 or 30% in a day. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation for sure. But this is the ice rink here at Bryant Park. It looks awesome. It looks great. Hey, Ryan Royal is here. It says, hey, Tom and Mods. Wow, Bryant Park looks completely different. Yeah, I mean, it took them, what, maybe like only 2 weeks to build this entire thing. So this is the Bryant Park Winter Village, sponsored by Bank of America. We are adjacent Bank of America Tower. Steamship is here. Hey, Steamship. Yeah, they did a really good job. So you have all your ice skating and then you have the lodge. I guess this is sort of like a bar. Maybe like a bar and grill restaurant. Somebody says, is it real ice? Yeah, it's actually kind of cold here too. It seems as if we may have skipped over Thanksgiving and gone right to Christmas, but looks really good. I think they did a great job. Hey, Dr. Longus is here. Good to see you, Tug Carter. Welcome. Pineapple Water says your point is only true with American companies. China GDP down to expected 3% and can't believe them anymore. Yeah, so Pineapple Water actually makes a really good point. Now, one of the reasons why, you know, anytime you buy like an Alibaba or something like that, they're technically considered American depository receipts is because the SEC has been in an ongoing battle with China and some of the Chinese companies out there to say, look, you know, your accounting standards needs to be held to the same standards that a lot of our American companies are, right? So, you know, we saw this with a particular company. Does anybody remember Luckin Coffee? Ticker symbol LK. Now, Luckin Coffee had every single sort of metric that you were looking for in a great growth stock, right? Double-digit sales and earnings growth, fantastic return on equity, pre-tax and after-tax margins, massive earnings growth. And Luckin Coffee, it just so turns out that a lot of the, I would say the accounting and the reporting were fraudulent. And I think the stock actually cratered about 90% on the day. And I think it's now delisted. It may be trading over the counter in the OTC markets. But Pineapple Water makes a good point. You know, one of the reasons I would say why a lot of American investors, or global investors for that matter, are a little bit reluctant investing in Chinese companies is just because the accounting methods are not as transparent as they are here in the US. Yeah, Sparks Carnival, that's right. Caterpillar also had a great October. So Caterpillar and 3M company too. We're actually going to be doing a deep dive into 3M, ticker symbol MMM. Now, that stock has been absolutely pounded into the dirt or into the ice because they're actually in intense litigation right now because of their earplugs that were allegedly damaging our soldiers overseas. But I think I'm going to save that conversation for a dedicated stream because I'm starting to do some work on 3M company right now, and I think it may outperform. Wow, they have absolutely everything up. They built everything. It looks great. MSK says, Tom, China's business cycle has been in contraction phase for about a year. They may turn around soon. Yeah, and look, I wish China all the best. You know, we've been talking about this many times on the live stream. I actually, in my college years, I wrote many of bull theses on China for reasons we've talked about. Now, for anybody who's just joining this conversation and wants to learn a little bit more about China as a whole and their AI, machine learning, artificial intelligence headways that they're making, I would recommend to you 2 specific books. Now, one book is called AI Superpowers by a gentleman that goes by the name of Kai-Fu Lee. Now, Dr. Kai-Fu Lee actually used to be the president of Google China during the tech and telecom bust. And now, and this guy is brilliant, by the way. You have to watch some of his interviews on YouTube. He's done many of podcasts. And he is such a brilliant guy. I think he's actually a native of Taiwan. But check out his podcasts and check out his books talking about the innovation that's going on right now in China as it relates to artificial intelligence, machine learning, and AI. And I believe he is retired now. Really quick, this is the Bryant Park Grill. Really nice place. It has a lovely indoor dining area as well as outdoor. But I believe he is retired now. However, he does run a venture capital firm called Sinovation Ventures. So if anybody in the chat wants to look that up, you could actually look at a list of all their holdings, Sinovation Ventures, and they exclusively invest into only Chinese-based AI and machine learning companies. Oh, look at the separate outdoor dining space they made here at Bryant Park Grill, all decorated for the festivities of Halloween, and I would also say probably the holidays as well, Christmas and the like. Hey, the Mighty Bull is here. This is watching, listening, liking. Good to see you, the Mighty Bull. Trust you're well. Happy Sunday to you, my friend. Hope you had a great weekend. Dr. Longest, what's up? Austin City Limits, good to see you. Ryan Beck says, I'm guessing the shops aren't up all year. So that is correct. Now, I'm not sure exactly how long the Bryant Park Winter Village will be up, but I think it ends maybe the first week of January. But it's kind of cool. There's all sort of local shops, obviously the ice skating rink. And I believe this was the first weekend it was up, and it was absolutely packed today. I will say it's very expensive here though. But that's probably because, you know, a lot of tourists, different things like that. But it is really nice. Cause and Panics says, man, if there was one time in the year to visit New York, it would for sure have to be during Christmas. It definitely is a nice time. Definitely is. However, I would say a visit to New York City right now would be great. I took a walk in Central Park. I was reading the paper, doing some work in Central Park today, and it was amazing to see all the leaves changing and things like that. So I think October is a really nice time to visit too. It's not too hot, not too cold. You can sort of walk around with a light jacket. But everybody, so I want to talk about Tuesday, because Tuesday is the first day of the month, November 1st. Can you believe it? October has come and gone, my friends. We are in the home stretch officially. November, December, and then it's 2023. Can you believe that? I can't believe that. Well, we better believe it, and I'll tell you why. Because on Tuesday, November 1st, which is the first business day of the month, we will be hearing from the Institute for Supply Management as they release their Purchasing Managers Index, or the PMIs. And this is probably the number one leading economic indicator that I look for.
In the lace up or lace down areas, please retrieve them. Unattended belongings are
Let's see what this. Let's see what the announcement says. Oh, I thought they were going to announce that Bryant Park was closing. But check out One Vanderbilt here. Beautiful. So the Institute for Supply Management will be releasing their Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index for October. Expectations or consensus among Wall Street economists is for a 50 reading, 1 point less than in September. So I'll tell you a real quick story about why I think following the Institute for Supply Management PMI numbers are so critical and so important. And it's essentially you're looking at the business cycle in real time. So I want to give you guys an example here. If we think all the way back to November of 2021, okay, so this time last year. Now, when we review this on the stream, if you type exclamation point ISM in the chat, so exclamation point ISM, I gave you guys a link to a database called ycharts.com, and it's going to give you the entire historical outlook of all of the Institute for Supply Management PMI numbers ever put out. And this data is really good to have if you want to build Excel models and just sort of look at past history. So if you type exclamation point ISM in the chat, scroll down about halfway through the page, and you'll see that in November of 2021, the PMIs came in at around 61, okay, around 61. And then December, I think we had a 60 reading. January, we had a 58 reading. And then last month, I think we had a 51 reading. So the reason why I'm telling you guys this is because the PMIs usually leads the major equity indices, such as the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And again, it's because you're looking at the business cycle in real time. So if you notice, and I believe this is the exact date, but January 4th of 2022 is, I believe, the exact day the S&P 500 put in a top. So the top tick for the S&P 500 was January 4th, 2022, just 2 months before we had a top in the PMIs. And ever since, the PMI numbers have been rolling over and decelerating. Now, I would like to say another thing as we look at the beautiful Empire State Building as we are standing outside of the Salesforce Tower here. Salesforce Tower is another software company, big enterprise SaaS company that trades under the ticker symbol CRM. Now, here's how many people interpret the PMI numbers. Many people say that a reading above 50 signals expansion in the manufacturing sector of the economy, which is true. And a reading below 50 signals contraction in the manufacturing sector in the United States economy. So many people would just look at the PMI numbers and say, well, just as long as the PMIs are above 50, everything is all well and good. But that's actually not how you should interpret that data, and I'll tell you why. What's more important is the overall trajectory of the PMIs. Are we having deceleration or are we having acceleration? And this is why, once again, if you type exclamation point ISM, one more time, exclamation point ISM in the chat, use that data to your advantage, okay? It's ycharts.com, and you could export that data to an Excel file, and I think it goes back to, 2005. And when you're building your Excel model, if you put a line graph or a bar chart, you'll see how it leads the S&P 500. So it's not so much the physical number that matters. It's the trajectory of those PMIs. Are they rolling over? Is the manufacturing sector getting weaker? Or is it getting stronger and going from 50 to 51, 51 to 55, 55 to 60? Because if it is, chances are the S&P and the major equity indices are going to follow suit. Hey, Mike Skate TV is here. This is Hey Yo Tom, happy Halloween Eve. You too, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words. You know, this is a clear night. If you look all the way down 6th Avenue, you could see the One World Trade Center. We are standing on the corner of 42nd Street, right outside of Bank of America Tower, and you see an amazing view of the Empire State Building. Just absolutely gorgeous. Hey, Nirvana fan is here. Good to see you. Using people says PMI is just one indicator, simplistic to use, only 2020. I don't know what that means. All right, let us head uptown. But to your point, so I like to use leading economic indicators, coincident economic indicators, and lagging economic indicators. And, you know, these are not a surefire bet to predict the trajectory of the market, but it can give us clues, right? And as investors, if we look at leading economic indicators, right, that'll help us position our portfolios for changes in the market, right? And then we can use coincident economic indicators to see if we're on the right path. And then we could look at lagging economic indicators to sort of check our work. And that's sort of how I use that. So we are going to pass West 44th Street. Now, on the corner of West 45th Street is the Marshall McLennan building. This is where I used to work, right here on the 2nd floor. And I want to show you guys the building directly across the street. And I can't believe it because back in 2019, when I used to work on the 2nd floor of this building right here, I would look across the street and the entire floor would be packed with people. And now the entire thing is empty, all the way up to the ceiling. If you see this building right here, so I used to work right here in this black one, and the white one, it's completely empty. So I'm not sure if these companies went out of business, or maybe they just broke their lease, or they're trying to sublet, but I don't know, I may have to look into that. Now, there was an interesting statistic coming out of Barron's. And it said that we're seeing massive consolidation in the commercial real estate market as it relates to like big office buildings. And I think KPMG just recently moved out of their offices on the east side of Manhattan, and they're moving into the brand new buildings of the Hudson Yards. But we're seeing this trend. I think Meta had over $1 billion in costs associated with consolidating office space. And I also think Amazon and Google will be trying to sublet some of their office space too. Using people as indicators should be used over different time frames. Example, 1 year, 1 month, weekly, daily, basically multiple time frame approach. I think that's a great comment. Is there anything specific using people that maybe you use when you're trying to, I guess, forecast financial markets? Anything that you think we should know or that you think would be of use to us? Maybe something that we haven't thought about? Sparks Carnival says Meta is working out of their mother's. Oh, God. Well, the weird thing is, if you walk down to Astor Place, which actually I think we were there last night. I actually think we ended the live stream at Astor Place last night. So right where the Kmart used to be. So this is adjacent to the IBM building, like the IBM Watson. I believe Meta has a lot of office space there. And I think they're at least in the process of breaking that lease. Anyway, now I don't think this is to say that a lot of these companies are doing this because of economic hardship. I think it's just the pandemic has taught everybody that depending on your employees, right? You could be just as productive maybe from a remote location, or only coming into the office maybe 1 or 2 days a week. So maybe you don't need, hundreds of thousands of square feet of office space. So this is the building I'm talking about. Check this out. So it's right above the Chick-fil-A. I used to sit right here, 1166. We used to have, I think D.E. Shaw, which is a quantitative hedge fund, was in our building. But anyway, I used to sit right here, and I had a great view into these 3 floors. And all of those floors are empty, I think going all the way up to the top. Which is crazy, because there used to be probably 75 to 100 people on each floor. Now, maybe the companies didn't go out of business, maybe they're just remote, right? But I think the point is, in commercial real estate, I think you're gonna see a big flight to a lot of these newer, brand new, maybe Class A office buildings. And a lot of the older ones are probably just gonna sit vacant. So potentially this will bring about an opportunity for developers or maybe even the city to get a little bit creative here to say, look, we have a lot of office space in Manhattan that is just sitting vacant. Maybe we could put our heads together and make them, either affordable-ish housing or just regular apartment buildings. I don't know. I think that's gonna need to be a real conversation there, to be honest. Hey, Tom G, good to see you. Dan Z. Good to see you. Yeah, or hotels, that's another thing. Speaking of hotels, we have Airbnb reporting earnings. And I think Airbnb is gonna beat earnings expectations because we're seeing a trend here. And it seems as if consumers are just shifting their spending habits. So we got some data coming out that credit card balances is now hit an all-time record high. However, I don't think that's really cause for concern just yet, because as we saw through a lot of these big bank earnings like Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, delinquencies haven't really ticked up that much. So if you look at a 30-day delinquency and you look at a 90-day delinquency, we're still below pre-pandemic levels, but we have ticked up a little bit. But anyway, sort of back to what consumers are spending on. During the pandemic, everybody was spending online, ordering trinkets off of Amazon, binging, streaming services such as Netflix, maybe like Paramount Plus, HBO. But now it seems a lot of consumers want to get out and travel. They want to come to places like New York City. I mean, there's so many people here today. And one of the predictions that I had that I think may come true, and very seldom do I like to make predictions. Hey, thanks, man. You too. Now, one of the things that I think is going to happen is during this holiday season, such as Thanksgiving and Christmas, I think this is going to be the most traveled Thanksgiving and Christmas ever. And one of the reasons why I say that is because this Labor Day that just passed was the most traveled Labor Day in American history. And I think that after 2 years of being locked down in a pandemic, nobody could really visit, their loved ones, their family and friends, things like that. People want to get out. People want to travel. People want to spend on experiences. I think the spending on hard goods, I think that's maybe in the rearview mirror. Using People says, what do I think about small business lending? I haven't heard of that. Let me see what companies you mentioned. Cabbage and On Deck. Now, I'm not familiar with Cabbage and I'm not familiar with On Deck, to be quite honest. Sparks Carnival says, I'm nervous the strong US dollar could repel foreign tourists from boosting Airbnb. That's an interesting thought. Well, I mean, it definitely happened this earnings season with a lot of the tech stocks. I mean, really any of the multinationals, right? Now, I think currency fluctuations accounted for about 600 basis points hit to Apple's revenue. And Tim Cook even came on the earnings call and he said that we would have had a double-digit revenue growth quarter. I mean, they posted 8% revenue. I mean, if you're pulling down $90 billion of revenue a quarter and you're able to increase by 8% year over year, I mean, that's just stellar. In any event, the interesting thing is Tim Cook said we would have had about 11% revenue growth if it weren't for a strong US dollar. So I think you may be right. I think you may be right. All right, so now we are crossing over to Radio City Music Hall and 1251 Avenue of the Americas. Check out the view from back here, amazing. Hey, Dan Zhang says, hey Tom, will you be streaming the Halloween night tomorrow in New York or Miami? Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to be live tomorrow. I'm gonna give it about a 50% chance. 50% will be here, 50% maybe not. I gotta prepare, I gotta do a lot of stuff. Tomorrow's gonna be a busy day for me. But good to see you, Dan. Thanks for joining, my friend. Tons of people out tonight. So on Tuesday, obviously, we are going to have Airbnb reporting. We are also going to hear from some prominent semiconductor stocks like AMD. But here's where I think the big winners are going to be this week for earnings season. I think it's going to be a lot of the oil stocks. So on Tuesday, we are going to hear from Devon Energy, and we are also going to hear from Marathon Petroleum. I think those two stocks are probably going to blow it out of the water. And the reason why I say that is because last week we heard from ExxonMobil and we heard from Chevron. And earnings growth was, I think, over 100% at ExxonMobil and about 86% at Chevron, I think. Yeah, I think EPS rose about 86% at Chevron. ExxonMobil, I think, about 181% earnings growth. Now, keep in mind that the vast majority of Q3, we had crude oil trading for above $100 a barrel. And right now, if you look at the ticker symbol CL, which is the crude oil futures contract, I think we're trading about maybe about 88 bucks, I think. So I think this energy trade could be a little bit long in the tooth, for lack of a better analogy. Hey, Aaron is here. This thumbnail drew me in. Good to see you, Aaron. Welcome. Lockjaw's here. Sparks Carnival says, I think AMD will do well. They keep chipping into Intel, pardon the pun. Yeah, I think we may hear from Intel too, right? You know what? I'm thinking of Qualcomm. So Qualcomm is going to report this week. But you're right, a lot of chip stocks are reporting. Dr. Longus says, Tom, do you think that China's market is going to continue to decline for some time in the future? So that's interesting, and I think we should briefly touch on that and talk about it. Now, when we were in Bryant Park, we did touch on it a little bit. So here's the issue with China right now. There's many very big prominent figures on Wall Street that are calling China quote unquote uninvestable. So here's the charting software that I use. If you go to tradingview.com and you look at the HSI, which is essentially the Chinese stock market. Oh my gosh, look at this. They already have the Christmas tree at the top of Radio City Music Hall. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. Wow. Is it just me, or are they putting up the Christmas decorations early this year? That's crazy. Wow. I didn't know that. I mean, it looks good. Maybe a little early, but it looks great. So if you look at the HSI, we're trading at levels, I think we've actually broken below the 2008 financial crisis low. So on a valuation basis, are there a ton of quote unquote bargains? Absolutely. However, it's not like buying American companies, right? Because the biggest issue that I see with China is we just really can't trust their accounting standards and their reporting standards. We sort of talked about, I think the most notable one of the recent times is maybe Luckin Coffee, ticker symbol LK. I don't even think it's trading anymore. It may be like an OTC stock trading over the counter. I think we still gotta wait for the light. Hold on. But I mean, if you look at Alibaba, I think it's trading below its IPO price, its initial public offering price, which is just insane. So are there sort of bargains out there? Yeah, but who's to say that these bargains couldn't get more of a bargain, right? Now, I think the people out there who are willing to stick their neck out and maybe just close their eyes and buy, a basket of Chinese stocks, you'll probably do all right, but I just think it's a little bit too risky for me. But I mean, I think in the investment business, you want to look for your edge, right? And when everybody is stacked on one side of the trade, when everybody thinks China is uninvestable, when everybody thinks China is uninvestable, the CCP is going to bring down China. History shows that is sort of when you need to sort of get involved. But me personally, I think I'm going to sit it out. Dan Zhang says, to be honest, Tom, Luckin is still doing very good in China, mainly because of the cheaper price. Yeah, so the company is probably doing really well. It's probably really popular. It's probably really good. But the problem is, if I'm investing, like let's say if I'm a big mutual fund or something, or a big hedge fund, and I'm investing client money, I can't just invest based upon the fact that a lot of people are going to the stores and it's doing good. You need to have some sort of accounting principles and standards, right? And I think that's why the SEC is continuing to battle with China and a lot of Chinese companies. And there's always this threat of delisting. So I totally agree with you. Luckin Coffee is probably fantastic. It's probably great. But I think if you can't have transparent accounting, I don't know how you could have the quote unquote, the big money invest there. I don't know. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream so far, feel free to leave a like on the video and hit the subscribe button if you're new. We usually do these live streams about 5 days a week between New York City and Miami. And we would be more than happy for you guys to come along for the ride. Dan says 18% of my cash is invested in China. Dan, any particular names, or are you just sort of buying an ETF or like an index, something like that? So for anybody who, and I think this is a very interesting topic of conversation. If you want to learn more, I would pick up a copy of this week's Barron's. There was some really, really amazing articles outlining both the bull thesis for China and both the bear thesis for China. And I think it's good to hear both sides, right? I'm always open to hearing different opinions, different perspectives. Now, I am very bullish China, but it's just, it's hard to invest with such a volatile, I would say, government. Okay, so Dan says you bought BABA and 2 ETFs. Copy that. All right, so this is Rockefeller Center now. Michael Joseph says China delisted 2 stocks I own. Yeah, I mean, last year I had a pretty big position in Alibaba, and I blew it out for tax loss selling. So I don't have any exposure to Chinese stocks. Actually, you know what? That technically may not be true, and I'll tell you why. Because I do own a little bit of an ETF VWO. And I think that may have some Chinese stocks in it. I think. I got to look at the exposure, but I think it mainly has exposure to, I think Taiwan Semiconductor may be one of the highest weightings in there. Julius is Tom, do you like Devon Energy? I mean, I think all the energy and oil stocks are doing great. I mean, ExxonMobil, after their earnings report, they gapped up big to all-time record highs. Again, I have a little bit of exposure to energy through the XLE, but I don't know. I think, you know, after this follow-through day, I'm like, what are the two things that I could buy? I always buy two things. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to buy the broader indice, I'm going to buy the S&P, and I'm going to buy the XLE. But look, the XLE could be getting a little bit long in the tooth here, so who knows? I think this guy is actually making the ice. This is kind of cool. Wow, this is actually really cool to see. So I guess this is how they're actually making the ice rink. This is actually really neat. Hey, Fun Feeds is here. This is Happy Halloween weekend. Thank you. You too. Dan Zhang says Chinese stock is better for swing trading positions. Dan Zhang says VWO, yeah, it's like an emerging market fund. Over 40% of it is currently concentrated to China. I have a very, very small portion of that. Now, here's the reason why I have VWO as opposed to, I think EMM or EMM is the main emerging market ETF. I just think the Vanguard one has a little bit less of an expense ratio, but it's nothing to sneeze at. It's just in one of my retirement accounts that I haven't touched in years. I'm definitely not, I haven't bought any more of it in a long, long time. But speaking of coffee, everybody, we probably have one of the largest coffee companies in the entire world reporting earnings on Thursday, November 3rd. We are going to hear from Starbucks, ticker symbol SBUX, as they report their Q3 earnings. And I think the main thing that I'm going to be looking for in Starbucks earnings report is not really the earnings and not really even the forward guidance. And I know that sounds crazy, but Manny says arrest him whistling in public. But we're supposed to have a little bit of a change in the corporate structure as it relates to the CEO. Now, the new CEO, I believe he is going to be doing some chaperoning of Howard Schultz for about a year, and then it'll be a clean handoff. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that transition. Now, the biggest concern I have with Starbucks specifically is a lot of the unionization effort, right? And that causes a lot of pain in the organization. But it's not just Starbucks. We're starting to see this unionization effort in some of the Amazon warehouse locations and at some major companies within the S&P 500. So I think a lot of analysts on the call are going to be asking for an update in relation to a lot of the unionization effort as well. Oh, this is a really nice view. So you have the John D. Rockefeller monument right here. And then you're looking all the way to the ice skating rink, and then all the way up to 30 Rock. And it looks like they have some sort of really beautiful mural on 30 Rock as well. Monique says union in New York, Starbucks, correct? Well, I believe one of the first Starbucks locations to unionize, I think, was in Buffalo, New York, I believe. Now, I'm not too sure how many stores actually chose to unionize, actually. But I think the one that kicked off the entire trend was in Buffalo, New York, which is upstate. I think it's right on the US-Canadian border, right there near the Niagara Falls. Mr. Cold says, did it shut down? I don't think so. I don't think it shut down. Oh, Joseph Hardaway says, yeah, it was Buffalo. Copy that. Wow, it looks like they're redoing the entire patio here. This is going to be really nice. Hey, Natalie's here. It says, hey Tom, interesting article in the Wall Street Journal on Hershey Company, ticker symbol HSY, outperforming tech gains for 3 years and beat more than 450 companies in the S&P 500 this year. Yeah, I mean, so to Natalie's point, if you look at the major equity indices, right? The NASDAQ, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the S&P. The Dow is severely outperforming the NASDAQ. This is St. Patrick's Cathedral, by the way. Beautiful church. One of my favorites. Hey, Dusty Cole is here. Hey, Dusty, good to see you. The Nick of Time says, are you against unions? No, I was actually in a union. Did anybody know that? I was actually in a labor union. I'm not sure if I told you guys. I was Local 1101. I was the Communication Workers of America back in the day. CWA. Little interesting fun fact about me. I think you guys may have known that. But anyway, so to Natalie's point, Natalie's making a great point here, because if you think about the companies that are getting blasted, that are getting bombed right now, are all of these major tech companies, because we are in an environment of quantitative tightening, in which case the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates to the tune of, well, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, about 4 consecutive 75 basis point rate hikes. We're going to get another 75 basis point rate hike Wednesday. I'm calling it right now. But a lot of these money-losing tech companies do not tend to perform well in an interest rate rising environment. So we're sort of having this rotation from very high beta growth to profitable companies that have earnings right now. Because a lot of these, I would say, SaaS companies, right? A lot of the software companies that make up a lot of the NASDAQ 100. I'd be interested to see what the NASDAQ 100 is actually trading at right now. If you look at futures, ticker symbol NQ. But as interest rates go up, the present value of their future earnings are worth less, because a lot of these tech companies have earnings priced further out. They don't have earnings today. They tend to be very high revenue growers. So if you look at a lot of the stocks in the Dow 30, that's why the Dow is actually leading the S&P, and the S&P is leading the NASDAQ. And it's interesting because if you look at 2020, if you look at 2018, does anybody remember when the bear market bottomed in 2018? It was actually on Christmas Eve. It was on December 24th when the market put in the bottom. And you'll notice the NASDAQ actually tends to lead the S&P and the Dow out of these bear markets. But now we're actually seeing the Dow and the S&P lead, because the Dow is obviously the Dow 30 has more of the consumer staples, consumer discretionary, and S&P has I wouldn't say a very high weighting, but it has a weighting to energy, and energy has been outperforming the entire broader base market. So if you think about companies like Hershey, like Natalie mentioned, these companies have earnings right now, and Wall Street tends to demand more value-based companies, especially when interest rates are rising. So this is the Cartier store. Beautiful flags outside. Amazing architecture. Dan Zhang says the NASDAQ is currently down 36 points. Hey, Richie says, hey Tom, what's your thoughts on SoFi? So I'm not really following SoFi. Is that one of those sort of like the buy now, pay later things? Here, let's cross over to 6th Avenue. Hey, Carol Williams is here. From Antigua and Barbuda, good to see you. Michael Joseph's tech and NASDAQ was in a bubble for the last 3 years, like 2000. That's why PE and all that stuff is coming down. Yeah, I mean, especially when you have crazy amounts of artificially suppressed rates and massive amount of money printing by the Fed, you have a lot of those tech companies going through huge PE expansion or multiple expansion. And to your point, the first stocks to really come down once interest rates start to go up are those very speculative high beta growth stocks. Michael Joseph's SoFi is a fintech company. Yeah, as of right now, I probably won't have any of those. It's probably a company that doesn't have any earnings. It was one of these, probably like an ARC Innovative, probably Kathy would have owned that stock. None of those particular companies are on my radar right now because they're pounded 90% to the floor. I try to look for stocks trading at their 52-week highs. They have good earnings, good sales. So a lot of those companies probably won't be on my radar. Here's an interesting company that's reporting earnings, which has been a very controversial company as of late. PayPal, I think, is going to report this week. And that should be interesting. Now, supposedly, there was some out of the rumor mills. I'm not even sure if it's true or not. But PayPal was supposedly going to instate a $2,500 fine that they could pull out of your account if you were suspected of spreading misinformation or something like that. Now, I saw that in an article and I didn't really want to take a deep dive into it because I was reading some of the comments and it was just a bunch of people fighting back and forth about Joe Biden and Trump. And anytime I see that in the comments, I just usually tend to mute those keywords. But I'd be interested to see what the analysts say about it. Supposedly a lot of people closed down accounts. So PayPal is definitely one to watch. We are going to get some data as it relates to job numbers. Oh, I think this may be the Salt Bay restaurant right in here. This is the Charles Schwab building, by the way. I think CBS is also in here. But the main office for Charles Schwab is here. Yeah, Barrington James is PayPal owns Cash App too. Michael Joseph says it may have been a misprint in their terms of service. So we were standing across the street from the UBS building. And on Wednesday, which is going to be the 2nd, and this is interesting because Wednesday is actually when we are going to be hearing from the Federal Reserve in relation to if they're going to raise interest rates by 75 basis points or not. But this is also when ADP releases the National Employment Report for October. And the consensus call is for private sector employment to increase by 199,000. That is going to be slightly below the 208,000 gain in September. Job growth is expected to start to moderate here, which could actually be, well, it's going to sound weird when I say this, but it could be good news if anybody is expecting a Fed pivot. That is sort of what the Federal Reserve wants to see. They want to see wage gains going down. They want to see job openings going down. And they also want to see the unemployment rate going up. Now, the last time we got the non-farm payrolls out, this is the flagship Hilton hotels, by the way. Now, this entire hotel was closed down for the pandemic. I think it just opened maybe about 8 to 9 months ago, but this entire hotel, the flagship Hilton here, was closed down. This is on the corner of West 53rd Street. And if you look dead ahead, this very, very skinny building is the Steinway building. Another beautiful addition to the Billionaires Row. But on Friday, we are going to hear from the Bureau of Labor Statistics as they release the jobs report for October. The economy is expected to add 200,000 non-farm payrolls after a 263,000 increase in September The unemployment rate is seen edging up to 3.6% from 3.5%. And that is exactly what the Federal Reserve wants to see. Now, the issue is the last time we got the non-farm payrolls out, we actually had the opposite happen. We saw the unemployment rate come down. So who knows? Now, the non-farm payrolls are coming out after the Fed makes their decision. So I think those particular numbers may go into factoring what the Fed may do in December. But I think it's pretty much a lock that we're going to get a 75 basis point rate hike next week. Now, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that non-farm payrolls are going to beat expectations? Or do you think they're going to come in worse than expected? It'd be interesting to see what you guys think. Michael Joseph says, Tom, do you have a favorite hotel in New York City? I do. I would say the Mandarin Oriental Hotel is my favorite hotel in the city. And that is right in the Deutsche Bank Towers, formerly known as the Time Warner Center. I'd say that is probably my favorite hotel. But this building that we're looking at right now is the 432 Park Avenue. It is another building right there on Billionaires Row. So CM says you think it's going to be a beat. Ryan Beck says you think it's going to be in line. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Hey, Steve CR is here. Says good evening all. What's up, Steve? Billy is here. Welcome. Says you think it's going to be a beat as well. Richie says thank you, Tom. Welcome. Yeah, Dr. Longus is no pivot this year. So let's cross here. You know, since we have the light, we might as well go up one more. This hotel is supposedly very nice too, the Warwick. Jonathan Richards says, I love the Plaza Hotel. Definitely a classic to New York. Dan Zhang says, Tom, with your knowledge of the financial markets and economy, have you ever thought about trading the futures market? I've traded the futures market a little bit, but I don't really see a reason for it, to be honest. You know, what I do in my actively managed account is I try to look for innovative growth companies that are either specialized in a particular product or service that is right either at the start of a trend or in the middle of an exponential growth trend. And they're compounding out their earnings by about 25% plus per annum. Same thing with revenue. Look for return on equity of about 40%, maybe around there. And very good pre-tax and after-tax margins. Now the problem is a lot of the stocks that I tend to trade are down very, very big right now. So I am pretty much sitting in a very big cash position. So for somebody like me to have a position in energy is very strange. But that's really my sort of style of investing. You know, I'm not going to buy these things with ridiculous amount of overhead supply. And I think that's a big mistake a lot of people are making. Right, for example, like a lot of the UCAS stocks, like the Zoom, the Ring Centrals, these things are down 90%, and you have people buying these things down 80 or 90%. I mean, think about that massive overhead supply, right? Those stocks have to work their way from 19 bucks all the way back to 300 bucks. So along the way, you were just going to be taking on supply like crazy of people who bought near the top, just that they want to get out. So I don't know. I think it's contrary to what a lot of people think. Buying these things that are down 90% is very, very risky. There's an interesting saying on Wall Street. It goes something along the lines of, you know, if the stock's down 90%, how much further could it fall? Well, it could fall another 90%. It could fall another 100%. It could go to zero. This is a really interesting cigar shop here. I think you could actually smoke cigars in the building. Anybody in the chat a big cigar smoker? Any cigar smokers here? Now, I don't smoke, but I'm not gonna lie. The store kind of smells nice from the outside. All right, 57th Street. Nope. I'm seeing a lot of no's. Ah, Dominic says, yes, sir. All right. So we made it, everybody. This is Billionaires Row. Dr. Longus says, I used to be a big cigar smoker. Yeah, NG says, I like the smell of cigars. Some cigar smoke I'm very, very sensitive to. However, for some reason, whenever I walk past that building, it smells really good. So here we have the Steinway building on Billionaires Row. Then we have 157 and the beautiful Central Park Tower right here. So we're gonna continue to head down 57th Street. Maybe we'll go up to Central Park South. Golden's Dawn is like, I like cigar smoke too. Okay, Dusty Cole says you smoke cigars occasionally. Interesting. So the first business day of the month, which is Tuesday, we talked about the Institute for Supply Management releasing their Purchasing Managers Index, or the PMIs. So that is one to watch. However, they will also be releasing their Services Index a little bit later in the week on Thursday. The Institute for Supply Management will release its Services PMI for October. Now, many economists on Wall Street are expecting about a 55.3 reading, which would be about, I think that's in line with what it reported in September, right? Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's either maybe a little bit higher or just in line with what we reported in September. So this is going to be an action-packed week on Wall Street. We have earnings, we have Fed news, and we have major leading economic indicators. So I think it's going to be another volatile one. Oh, you know what? I may want to take back what I said about my favorite hotel. So here's one of my other favorite hotels. If you look at this building right here, this is the very famous Essex House. So it is the JW Marriott Essex House. Now, this hotel is not a brand new sort of, I would say, modern hotel like this one, which is 157. And inside 157, you have the Park Hyatt, which is a really nice hotel. I believe a 5-star hotel, but it's all modern. Now, if you sort of like the old style feel of New York City, then I think you would like the JW Marriott house a little bit better. So depending on, you know, I guess whatever mood I'm in. I don't really stay in hotels because I'm from New York, but those are two nice hotels right next to each other. Anybody here ever stayed at the JW Marriott? Oh, is that right? Michael Joseph says a lot of celebrities live on the upper floors of the Essex House. Yeah, I think you can. I think there are rentals, and I think you can buy condos there. Similar with 157, right? So this side, you have the Park Hyatt New York, which is an amazing hotel. It has a swimming pool. The gym is unreal. But then this is 157, which is condominiums. Extreme luxury condominiums. And I think Michael Dell has a place here. I think Bill Ackman, which is a hedge fund manager, has a place here too. And I think this is one of my favorite buildings in the entire New York City because this is the building that started the entire Billionaires Row trend, right? The Extel Group Hey, Christy F says, Tom, I stayed at the JW Marriott in Vegas when it was new and it was really nice. Yeah, they're a very, very nice chain of hotels there. But this is Central Park Tower here. And then this is 220 Central Park South. And this is the Russian Tea Room. Lisa says, isn't the Essex House $3,000 a night? No, it's not $3,000 a night. You know, I would say, Lisa, you could probably get some rooms there for $3,000 a night, right? I think if you could probably get some $3,000 a night hotels at the Park Hyatt too. But I think you could probably book maybe a $850 room there. Hey, William, this is the Marriott Marquis. Spent $15,000 for 3 weeks. Jesus, man. That's insane. Hey, Clarence is here. Clarence Jackson says the falling crane at 157 was during Sandy. I remember that, man. That's insane. You know, I think the anniversary of Hurricane Sandy actually just passed, right? B1 Riddler says $800 to $900 for the Essex House. Yeah, that sounds about right. It's really beautiful. You know what? All this talk about the Essex House, I'm going to take you guys there tonight. Love is kind, says Tom. Would you ever pay $3,000 a night for a hotel? I personally would not. I just think that's too crazy. But right across the street is Carnegie Hall, right on the corner of 7th Avenue. Hey, Neil is here. Good to see you, Neil Bell. Welcome. And then once again, we can see 432 Park Avenue. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and hit the subscribe button if you're new. We usually do these live streams about 5 days a week between New York City and Miami. Also, if you like a lot of the financial topics we talk about each night, if you scan the QR code on your screen, I write a free investing newsletter where we talk about the US equity markets, emerging markets, fixed income, and sometimes cryptocurrency markets as well. And oftentimes we'll touch on some of the topics that a lot of the viewers bring up in the chat. It's a good time, so please join us over there. Scan the QR code, punch in your email, you'll receive it for free. But now we are looking at the very famous New York Athletic Club. Anybody in the chat belongs to the New York Athletic Club or ever been to any events here? It's an amazing, amazing place. And I think if we get a little bit closer, if we cross the street here, if we crossed 58th Street, you're gonna be able to see to the right sort of the balcony where they have a lot of the parties. And in the summer, it looks unreal. Hey, Roxanne Robles, thank you so much for the $5 donation. I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much for the support. Look at these two dogs here. And I hope you're having a great Sunday so far. All right, now check this out. So if you see all these little arches right here, I think you guys should be able to see it. All these little arches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have an amazing, amazing view of all of Central Park, because this is Central Park South right here, 59th Street. And during the summer, they have all types of events up there at the New York Athletic Club. It's really, really amazing. You know, we've been talking a lot about hotels on the chat tonight. Does anybody know when Hilton is reporting earnings? Or maybe they've already reported? Because maybe that could potentially play along in the thesis that we've been talking about on the live streams of, you know, people are going to be traveling a lot. The demand for travel is very, very high. And if you think about it, Hilton, Marriott, they tend to cater towards, I would say, maybe upper middle class and maybe upper class customers. Would you agree on that? I think something like maybe a Marriott would cater towards more of the upper class, potentially maybe middle class. And from a lot of the data that we've been getting out, especially from the earnings report of LVMH, it seems like there's a huge bull market in luxury. So LVMH Moet Hennessy reported earnings, double-digit sales growth, I believe double-digit earnings growth, and I think Hermes said that they are going to be increasing the prices of all of their products by at least 5 to 7% next fiscal year, just because the demand is so strong. So you never know. I think maybe that could be a potential bull thesis. Dan Zhang says Hilton reported already, EPS of $1.31, revenue of $2.36 billion. Thank you for that, Dan. Yeah, so here is the lobby of the JW Marriott Essex House. And you'll sort of understand what I mean by very classic. Almost like a Great Gatsby feel, right? If anybody's been in the lobby of the Park Hyatt at 157, very, very different. Very, very different. This is sort of like you're back in the olden days in New York. Very gaudy, I would say, almost. But isn't it beautiful? Look at the architecture on the ceiling, the crown moldings. It's unreal. And once again, this is the very front of the JW Marriott Essex House. Photos from around New York, says Tom. Speaking of hotels, the Waldorf Astoria in New York reopens in 2023. Hey, that's really good news. You know, speaking of Waldorf Astoria, I believe in Miami, they just broke ground on the brand new Waldorf Astoria, which is supposedly going to be the tallest residential apartment building south of One World Trade Center. So this is the, I would say, the restaurant that is connected to the JW Marriott Essex House. It's called Seagate. Very beautiful. Or Southgate, excuse me. Very nice dining here. You have a beautiful seat at the table, and all along the outside, you have a beautiful view of Central Park, and you also have a beautiful view of the Deutsche Bank Towers directly in front of you, which actually used to be called the Time Warner Center. So speaking of another 5-star hotel right here, this is the Trump International Hotel and Tower, where on the left side of the building, you have your hotel, and on the right side, you actually have residences. So there's luxury condominiums, and you could actually rent them as well. You know, Hampton House is also very nice. Mike C says, are there residences in One World Trade? There are not. Barrington James says it's way better than 157 in my opinion. It's the real deal. So in this tower right here, this is actually where the Mandarin Oriental is. And that's a really, really nice hotel. Now, when we do our Miami streams, you'll actually be able to see that on Brickell Key, the island Brickell Key. So the Plaza Hotel is down on 5th Avenue, so 2 blocks over. I think that one's really expensive too. I think that one may be more expensive than the Essex House, I think. Yeah, I think maybe a lot more expensive. Roxanne Robles says, wow, the Mandarin Oriental starts at $1,300 a night. Holy crap. That's insane. Hey, War Walkers here says, which building was your former apartment? This one right here. Now, the only reason why I lived here is because I got a really good deal during the coronavirus, when everybody essentially moved out of the city. Everybody was dumping real estate. So it allowed me to get a really good deal here, right here at Central Park South. A lot of interesting artwork here too. Wow, Jonathan Richards says the Plaza Hotel has crazy expenses, but it is a true experience. Yeah, Dan Zhang, so the interesting thing is, I mean, you know, you lived in New York during the pandemic. Once COVID hit, it was very, very bizarre. We had a mini flash crash in real estate and the rental market here in New York City, and everybody started to leave. I mean, everybody. So I was able to get a studio apartment right here, 106 Central Park South, for right around $2,000. So I was actually on the 20th floor, and you actually could see a little bit of the park. Not too much, but a decent view nonetheless. But when I left, or when I actually had to move out, they raised the rent back up to 40, I think it was 4,300 it may have rented for, or maybe 4,500. But yeah, everything shot right back up. Now, speaking of really nice hotels, I think this is the Ritz-Carlton right in front of us. We just not need to get hit by the Lamborghini. Yeah, right in here is the Ritz-Carlton.
Thank you.
Really, really nice here. I've never stayed here though. Clarence says it's a very nice hotel as well. Have you stayed here, Clarence, in the Ritz-Carlton? I guess we'll hit every hotel since we're on the topic of hotels tonight. The Park Lane Hotel I've actually stayed in before, but before it was renovated. So once COVID hit, I think the entire thing was closed down and they gut renovated it. But before it was renovated, it was a really nice hotel. Really nice views of Central Park, obviously being here at Central Park South. Now on the second floor, you'll see it's the big ballroom where you get breakfast in the morning. Really, really nice. And everything is all brand new. And this is the Park Lane Hotel. Yeah, Cindy for all these like hotel tours tonight. Might as well. It sort of fits in the topics that we talk about. Hilton reported. Wow, Julia M says you had your Sweet 16 at the Plaza. That's crazy. Well, how was it? I gotta ask. So the Plaza, unfortunately, it has a lot of scaffolding over it. You can see this blue scaffolding is where the Plaza Hotel starts. But the location that we're gonna walk past right now is the residences at the Plaza. I'll quickly show you guys this store. They have a lot of sort of gaudy type of trinkets. Now, if I was a rich guy, I'd buy the Mighty Bull right here. I have a smaller Mighty Bull, but Yeah, I don't think I could afford anything in here. Look at this entire, is that a jade piano? Would you consider that jade maybe? Whatever it is, it's wild, wild, wild. Hey Laytha, what's up? Happy Halloween Eve, I guess. Okay, so now we are coming up to the residences at the plaza. So right on Central Park South is not where you enter the hotel. If you own a residence here, or maybe even rent an apartment here, this is where you would enter. But the one thing I like about the plaza is these detailed, I guess you could call them lamps or lanterns. Look at the detail on that. Isn't that insane? It's beautiful. Oh yeah, that's right. Clarence Jackson says, Tom, I used to go to the shops at the plaza pre-COVID. The shops are permanently closed. Are they really? I think I could have sworn I just went in there not too long ago. Hey, Barrington James, thank you so much for your $5 donation. I appreciate it very much. This has got to run, but I appreciate your style in class. Do you know Matt McCall? I do not know Matt. I'm not too sure who that is. But thank you so much for the support and your donation. I know, Jonathan Richards, like the scaffolding at the plaza is horrendous and it makes me sad. Yeah, it's true. That's true. Here, let me make a right here and I'll show you guys the front. And if you go to the far left, you could actually see a little piece of the main lobby, and the chandeliers are to die for here. But once again, thank you so much for your donation. I appreciate it a lot. So this is where you would enter if you're staying as a guest at the hotel. You'll see the beautiful red carpets leading up to the front doors. Wow, check out the revolving door here. It looks like the originals. I like all the gold and the black moldings there too. So let's pretend you're a guest at the plaza. You're coming out, and this is the view you have of the Apple store here at 5th Avenue, but also you could see just a teeny piece of 432 Park Avenue and Trump Tower. And then you have sort of this checkered or chessboard floor. Dan Zhang says, Tom, do you think it's still worth it to live in the city? I've never experienced living in Manhattan. Spent my whole life living in Queens. Dude, you gotta live in Manhattan, dude. Especially when you're young, you gotta try it. It was a blast. It was a blast. So this was what I'm talking about. Check out all of the crown moldings inside the Plaza Hotel, as well as the chandeliers there. Now, is that not just amazing? Incredible, right? Now, hopefully, they take down the scaffolding at some point because it wraps all the way around. I'll try to give you one more shot of the inside. Oh, look at the dog. Love the dog. 10 out of 10 on the dog. Now, the last thing I'd like to say, as we've pretty much pushed through the entire stream here on our Wall Street to look ahead, this week is going to be very, very heavy as it relates to a lot of oil and gas stocks reporting earnings. So Dominion Energy and also Duke Energy is reporting on Friday, and I think they're going to crush it. just like ExxonMobil and just like Chevron crushed it. I think also Marathon Petroleum is reporting. But just be aware that, you know, Q3, high gas prices, I would say high crude oil prices really help these oil companies. But now look where crude is trading right now, right around $80 a barrel. I'll show you guys the top of the Plaza Hotel. But I think going into Q4, think about how much crude oil prices have come down. So that could potentially be a little bit of an impact to earnings. I know the refining margins is going to be something I'm looking at very, very closely. I know they've come down. And then also on Friday, which is very, very big, but it will not impact the Federal Reserve's decision to raise interest rates, because we are going to get that decision on Wednesday. But Friday is when we will be hearing from the Bureau of Labor Statistics as they release the jobs report for October. Now, the economy is expected to add 200,000 non-farm payrolls after a 263,000 increase in September. And so here's some good news for all of you that are expecting a Fed pivot in December. The unemployment rate is expected to edge up to 3.6% from 3.5%. And that's exactly what the Fed wants to see, is the unemployment rate going up, as opposed to what happened last non-farm payrolls when the unemployment rate went down. Hey, Bior says, hey Tom, thanks for these great live streams. Great content. You need to do Atlanta someday. Hey, thank you so much for your donation. I appreciate your kind words, and thank you for the $10. And I can guarantee you I will be in Atlanta sometime in 2023. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling. So thank you for the support. Appreciate it. Joseph Hardaway says, off topic, but are taxis more popular than Uber or ride sharing services in New York? I don't know. So to be totally honest, I am probably the worst person to ask for that. I never take a taxi and I never take the subway. I'm walking almost the entire time, which is very uncommon. New Yorkers always take the subway, but I don't know. I just walk. But I would say that probably Uber is more popular than the taxis, because unfortunately, now we could sort of debate this until the cows come home, but I'll just sort of give a broad overview for those of you who are not familiar. Now, ever since we had the ride services such as Uber and Lyft come about, that really drove down the valuations of a lot of the taxi medallions. And unfortunately, due to predatory lending and, you know, people coming to the United States and thinking that, you know, investing in a taxi medallion was a very good investment, you know, these things went for as high as, you know, $800,000 to $1 million, if you could believe that. And now they're pretty much not worth a lot. And, you know, we could go through the whole big story, but, you know, ridership is probably cut in half for traditional taxi cabs. Everybody can call an Uber and a Lyft. So, I don't know, that would be sort of my take. But speaking of that, I think Uber may report earnings next week, right? I mean, it's so busy next week on Wall Street. It's going to be insane. My head's going to be spinning. But I could have sworn Uber is reporting. Sparks Carnival says Uber is reporting next week. Do you know what day? It'll be interesting to see. Let's cross here. I'll show you guys the Apple Store and we'll wrap it up. Hey, J22, thank you so much. Yeah, Dr. Longus says, I was wondering about the medallion. It was a big problem here. I think it still continues to be a major problem in the city. Michael Joseph says, Tom, people lost millions on the taxi medallions. You know, if anybody is interested further, because I think it's an interesting thing to research. If you go on YouTube and just type in, I think News 11, maybe Pix 11 News, they did an entire investigative piece on the taxi medallion issue. And I think it's I think it's probably important that you watch it, just so you are up to date on what happened there. Okay, Sparks Carnival says Uber reports on Tuesday. Yeah, I mean, Uber is another one of those very high beta, frothy valuation tech companies that I don't even know how the business model works without low interest rates, but we'll figure that out. But Tuesday is also Devon Energy. And I think any of the energy stocks, any of the oil and gas stocks, I think are going to absolutely blow it out of the water. So, hey, who knows? Maybe we'll gap up to another record 52-week high on the XLE. We'll see. Now, talking about REITs. So a REIT is a real estate investment trust. We have one of the most, I would say one of the most notable or famous REITs reporting this week. That is the Simon Property Group. Ticker symbol. What is the ticker symbol for Simon Property Group? SPG, I think. Hey, Deep Coder is here. Says Dogecoin is up 80% since Elon Musk took over Twitter. I saw that. That's hilarious. That's actually really hilarious. Yeah, CM says the taxi medallions were a big scam. I don't know if I would call it a scam. I think it's a lot of predatory lending and false promises. Well, yeah, I guess a scam. Yeah. Mike C, good to see you. It says ticker symbol SPG. So look at this. You could actually see right into the Apple Store. You can see people shopping. Now, I think we've said it before, but Apple reported earnings and pretty much saved the S&P 500. They reported about 8% revenue growth. Now, here's the interesting thing. So Tim Cook came on the earnings call and said that if it wasn't for a strong US dollar, we would have actually had an 11 or double-digit revenue growth quarter. So currency fluctuations accounted for about a 600 basis point hit to revenues, or about 6%. And I think with a lot of these multinationals here, you're going to see a lot of, I would say, talk on these earnings calls about revenue loss due to currency fluctuations. Check this side out. So I think this side is where they have the trainings. So if you come to the Apple Store, you could actually get a training on how to use the products and services. And I think that's over here, so check it out. Isn't that crazy? Talk about an interesting design. Yeah, photos from around New York is correct. This is the 24/7 Apple Store. So it's open 24/7, 365. Now, for a little bit of market research here, before Apple's earnings report, I went into the Apple Store right here on 5th Avenue, and I had to get an adapter, because just like with every Apple product, you have to have an adapter for an adapter just to plug in your adapter to the phone. Anyway, so I went in there, I spent $9 on a little dongle about this big, just so I could plug in my headphones so we could do the live stream. And it took me about 30 minutes just to get out of the place. And the place was packed to the rafters with people. And they weren't just there as tourists to look around. These people were walking out with laptops. They were walking out with iMacs, iPhones. So the demand is there. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, look, Tom, that's a little bit too anecdotal, because that is the most sought after Apple Store in the world, the 5th Avenue flagship, which I understand and I get that, but still, for it to be, I think I went in there on a Tuesday afternoon, and for it to be slam packed like that, well, they reported a fantastic quarter. Yeah, that's a good point. Ryan Bex is sorry, but I'm not buying a laptop at 2 a.m. and walking home with it in New York City. That's funny. Now, during my college days, I actually had a buddy who used to work at the Apple Store, and he was telling me some crazy stories about how a lot of tourists would come in, very, very wealthy, from overseas, and they would drop $10,000, 20 grand, just buying their kids and just crazy amount of stuff. And then they would actually have to load it into big, Escalades that would pull up alongside of the Apple Store, and they would take it back to the hotels, in their big entourage. Crazy stuff. They do a lot of business. I would like to see the individual sales metrics. I wonder what the revenue of that Apple Store is. I'd be interested to see. Hey, NMB 045 is the Apple Store in my suburban neck of the woods. Here in Montreal is always busy too. Same thing in Miami. Has anybody been to the Apple Store at Brickell Village? The Brickell City Center? Always packed. Right in the KPMG building. Always packed. Same with the one in South Beach too. Always packed. Now, here's what I was most impressed with. And I continue to be the most impressed with as it relates to Apple's earnings. And we talked about this last week, but their services sector. So if you think about just reoccurring revenue, so many people, and I would say up until about 2013, 2014, Wall Street would only view Apple as a hardware company, right? iPhones, iPads, computers. But if you think about their services, such as Apple Music, iCloud, and just all of the other miscellaneous software, that's larger than some standalone software companies in and of itself. In addition, their other products, such as Apple AirPods, and I believe the smartwatch, maybe the Apple Watch, goes in that category as well. That is even bigger than some revenues of companies that are publicly traded, which is just wild. Just in those main two metrics alone. Could you imagine just having a headphone business, AirPods? I guess also the Beats, right? Didn't Apple acquire Beats by Dre? Just being $1 billion run rate as well. That's insane. So Stephen Bates is probably $80,000 a day at least. What, at the Apple Store? I was thinking like multi-millions. Or maybe I'm overestimating. So if we had to guess in the chat, since we're up on hour 2, I think this would be a fun thing to guess. If you had to guess what the average daily revenue at the Fifth Avenue Apple Store is, what would you guys guess? So average daily revenue at the flagship Apple Store. Dan Zhang says, wow, I forgot about Beats. It used to be so cool to have a pair of them back in the day. You think 30,000? Yeah, Ryan Beck, I was gonna say the same thing. Maybe around like 1,500,000. Griffin says, I have never bought an Apple product and never will. Well, I guess give it time. Teresa Diaz is $250,000. Mike's is 400K. Travel Nistas is 500. Well, I mean, if you think about, let's say an iMac costs what, $1,500? An iPhone costs, 1,000. Yeah, I could see that. Hey, Andy is here from South Korea. Thank you so much for joining. Good to see you. Trust you're well, Andy. So speaking to the iPhone 14, supposedly there's so much demand for the iPhone 14 Pro that they don't even have enough supply for it. So that's a pretty good indicator about how, I would say, how strong a lot of the holiday sales are going to come in for Apple. Yeah, Capital Post as Elon Musk is buying Apple next. All right, so I have an interesting thing to end the stream. So tomorrow is Halloween, and I may not be live. It's going to be about 50-50. Now, if you guys had to take a guess at the average year-over-year increase in the price of candy, what would you guys say? So this is a statistic coming out of Barron's this week. So the rise in the price of candy over the past year is the largest ever, just in time for Halloween. On a percentage basis, what do you guys guess is the year-over-year growth in the cost of candy for this Halloween season? What would you guess? Yeah, Griffin says just don't like their software products are made fairly well, but their upgrade model is so weak, like a lot of new generation of any phone, really. This is Griffin. Wow, you guys are coming in high. Jeez, 125%, 79%, 25%. So far, War Walker is the closest. I'll just say that.
I don't think she wanted us.
Mike C, I think you guys are overshooting here. Abby says 25. All right, I'm gonna let a couple more guesses roll by. Mike C says 35. 200% says Addy. Oh my gosh. Ah, Ryan Royal, you got it right on the nose, man. 13%. That's a good guess. Yeah, so 13%, according to Barron's, is the rise in the price of candy. Year-over-year price rise this year. Now, since a lot of you put like 250%, are you guys in agreement with that statistic? I would assume many of you probably have bought some candy for the kiddos that are going to be door knocking. Did you spend more this year or less this year on candy? What would you say? Dang, but Ryan Royal right on the nose with 13%. Vidu says no, that's a lie. How far are they going back? A year over year, from October to October. I'm a monster. This is with a lot of expensive things like the iPhone, there is still a lot of buy now, pay later options. Yeah, that's true. Now, speaking of ridiculous price increases, I will say this. Unfortunately, because I almost eat out every single day in New York. I don't really cook, so I get lunch and dinner in the city. And I've been noticing a trend just recently of a lot of the restaurants that I frequent. I mean, some of the price increases are insane. So usually when I go to the restaurants that I always go to, I don't even look at how much it is. And it's not because I'm a big high roller. It's because the bill always comes like 25 bucks, maybe 15 to 25 bucks. But, you know, I looked down at the bill today and I was like, holy crap, $40. I was like, that's like insane, just for like a little, pretty much a little nothing. Now, I don't want to say the exact names of these places because, you know, I still would encourage people to go out to eat and support the small businesses, but man, I mean, these price increases are nuts. I will also say this. So I went to the Bryant Park Winter Village today, and there's this one place that I go to every year that is the best, hands down. It's like the best. I go there every year just to get some stuff, and the guy tells me the total is $20. And I was like, what? It's how much? And he's like, yeah, it's $20. And I don't want to say what the exact product was because I want people to go there and, you know, they're all small businesses there, which I support. But let me just tell you, it was a small cup of something and a very small pastry. It was $20 US. I was like, oh, I don't. I'm like, dude, I don't know if I could do that. Just on like, cheese. Things are getting expensive, man. Now, granted, Bryant Park Windsor Village is more along the lines of like a touristy thing, you know, once a year. But still, I even noticed at the San Gennaro's Feast, I mean, things were crazy expensive. Have you guys been noticing when you go into the grocery store, things have been expensive there too? Because in all the inflation data, food prices are soaring. But to be honest, very seldom do I actually go into the grocery store. Only really when I'm in Miami. I shop at the Walmart Supercenter. I know, Dan's saying that's hilarious. This Arizona green tea is the only thing still not affected by inflation, sitting at $1 after all these years. That's the real MVP right there. Edwards' hot chocolate is $8 at the Winter Village. If that's the one you're thinking of. That's actually pretty cheap compared to what I got quoted. But no, it wasn't the hot chocolate. It was something else that was hot. Francisco GM says, Tom, can you show us Chelsea tonight or tomorrow? Thank you in advance. Yeah, we'll probably do that tomorrow, to be honest, because we're coming up on the end of the live stream. So Photos from Around New York, our moderator here, says, Tom, I took up cooking in the past couple of years, so now I could cook lunch and dinner and save money. It's definitely a very good skill to learn. Griffin says, dozen eggs used to be around $1.25 at my nearest Albertsons. It's now $5.50. Wow. Yeah, eggs are expensive. So speaking of Albertsons, I think we were just talking about a big M&A deal on Wall Street, and I'm blanking on the name, but I think Albertsons is merging with somebody, or somebody's buying Albertsons. Could somebody do a quick check on that? For some reason, I'm blanking on the name. Usually once we go past hour 2 on the live stream, my brain turns to mush, but I think it's Albertson and someone else. Layla, could you put in the chat what the name of the other company is? Kroger Safeway, that's what it is. Thank you so much, Kim Grant, you're the best. Kroger and Albertsons, thank you guys, I appreciate that. Yeah, now the interesting thing about that merger, I was reading the Wall Street Journal article, is a lot of the CEOs, especially at Walmart and Amazon, obviously Amazon with Whole Foods, right? Now, the biggest push that I think in grocery is going to be in delivery. And supposedly the FTC may block this merger and force Kroger, Albertsons to divest some of their core stores into like a subsidiary. But honestly, I don't even think they should have to do that. Because if you think about the massive monopoly that Walmart has, I would even say the massive monopoly that Amazon has, they're going to have a huge advantage with grocery delivery, right? I mean, it's a match made in heaven. Amazon, Whole Foods, Walmart's getting really good at delivery too, so should be interesting. Hey, Mr. Rupani says, hello, Tom from India. Welcome to all of our Indian viewers. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. So does anybody here in the chat use any of the grocery delivery services? Okay, so a lot of people here do Stop and Shop. Hey, Elizabeth is here. Welcome. Good to see you. Troy Atman says, does anybody trust food coming from Amazon? I do. You know, Whole Foods is very expensive. I think somebody in the chat likes to use the terminology whole paycheck as they relate to Whole Foods, but they have some very quality stuff there. Okay, Vonda Howard says I used Walmart, Kroger, and Instacart. Terrence Hughes says I used Amazon Whole Foods for delivery. Yeah, I mean, look at Walmart. Walmart is ticker symbol WMT. Walmart's holding up pretty well too. Oh, CM says Trader Joe. You know, I don't like Trader Joe's. And that's coming from a New Yorker. I know I'm gonna get crucified in the chat. I'm gonna get flamed. But I'm just gonna take it because I don't really like Trader Joe's, man. Wow. Somebody says Whole Foods is horrible ever since they sold it to Amazon. Really? Well, I don't know. I don't really have anything to compare it with because I think the only time I've been to Whole Foods is when Amazon acquired it. But that's a really interesting piece of information. Has it really gone downhill? In what ways would you say? Huh. All right, team, I got to apologize in advance, but we're coming up on 2 hours and 15 minutes here, and I got to make my train back to Long Island. But I wanted to say thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. It was a fun stream. This was a fun stream. We covered a ton, from corporate earnings, from major economic data that is coming out with the Institute for Supply Management. We are going to hear from the Federal Reserve, okay? On Wednesday as they set the tone for the next course of monetary policy. Be on the lookout for a 75 basis point rate hike. If you guys are new to the channel, feel free to hit the subscribe button, leave a like on the way out, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Happy Halloween. If I don't see you tomorrow, I'm going to be back on my way to Miami, Florida. It's about a 50% chance if I'm going to be streaming tomorrow. I want to wish everybody a happy and safe Halloween. I do want to say, if you have kids and you're taking them out trick-or-treating, be on the lookout for crazies. I want you guys to be safe. I want you to have a very happy, healthy Halloween. We don't need any crazy incidents. And I wish you nothing but peace and blessings to you and everybody around the world. Please be safe tomorrow. Big week on Wall Street. We're going to be covering it right here. If you want to stay up to date on our financial newsletter, feel free to scan the QR code. And to the mighty bull, have a good night wherever you are, because there's only a bull market. There's always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. So Deep Value Alex, thank you so much. Leida, Monique, Mr. Rupani, thank you so much. Natalie, Sabrina Fair, Mike C, Dr. Longus, Elizabeth, Day's Work, East Coast, Andy from South Korea, War Walker, Top G, thank you. Kevin Ramsey. And I think that's all we got. Michael Joseph, everybody take it easy. Troy Atman, be safe. Dusty Cole, thank you to all of our moderators. Be safe out there tomorrow, and good luck on the week ahead.